Hello there, hello, Faith Jacobs here for a very quick video. I'm not going to do a long video today, I'm just going to do a very quick one. But it is January 5th. It is the birthday of Constanze Weber. I need to look and see how many years. Goodness me. Goodness me. Stay. Constanze Weber Mozart. The real reason why I am writing this amazing series, Faithfully Yours Mozart, which, as you can see, my copy has a lot of love already. But that's only because I use it a lot, and it's meant to be loved. In my opinion, a book that starts to have a little bit of, this is a book that's being loved, and I love my books. Let's see. Today is Constanze Weber Mozart's birthday. Well, she was born, and let's you know what, as I'm doing this, let's begin. She was born in 1762 in a place known as Zell, Germany, a little town in Zell. And her family moved to Mannheim not long after her youngest sister Sophia was born. So it goes Josephina, Aloysia, Constanze, and then Sophia. And if you want to get really technical, she actually had two brothers, but they oftentimes disappear from the history. We don't really know what happened to them. But she had two brothers, Pierre and Johann. And Pierre was older. He would have been about 32. And I believe that Johann was about the same age as Aloysia. He was born about the same time, so I think that Aloysia had a twin that we didn't necessarily know about, but Leopold mentions 6 children, not 4, 6, in one of his letters, which possibly could have been a mistranslation, but there is a record. There are birth records, and there is a Johann Baptist Weber. So you will see mention of them in Faithfully Yours Mozart, but they will not appear. They are mentioned throughout the series, but they really don't make any appearances, only because they had no real role for what the story I was doing. It would have overcomplicated things. But they may appear in prequels. You may see them at some point. But Constanze was how's it go? She was the third child of Cecilia and Fridolin Weber. She was, for some reason, sort of the Cinderella of her family in a way. Aloysia, Josepha, and Sophia were treated quite as superior to Constanze for some reason, and Constanze was sort of regaled to the maid, or so Mozart made it out to be. And when you read Mozart's real letters, you will see that he describes them all so eloquently. He describes Aloysia as a fox, basically not to be trusted. He describes Josepha as lazy, so snobbish and lazy. And he describes Sophia as featherbrained, although he liked her. He very much liked Sophia, so don't mistake his honesty for not liking her. He very much valued Sophia. As a matter of fact, she was the only of the sisters to be at the wedding of him and Constanze when they married. But Constanze was the one who took care of everything. She took care of the washing, the cleaning, the boarders, everything in the house where Mozart stayed with them in 1782. And January 5th is her birthday. And as a matter of fact, today I just saw that the Mozarteum is doing some sort of tour or exhibit about her. Now, for my part, to celebrate Constanze, I will say she lived until about 80. She died in 1842. And I have right in front of me the last known interview of Constanze Weber that happened in 1829. Now, this book, A Mozart Pilgrimage, is often forgotten. Or if it's not, it's out of print, basically. I'm very lucky I have a copy. But this is the book. This is the book that inspired this. As a matter of fact, it was an incredible find. Finding A Mozart Pilgrimage. It's a very old book. It was an amazing find in like getting this book, because from this I really saw the personality of Constanze shine through. Allow me to say that you must ignore the narrator who narrates the in-between when they're not relaying the translated diaries of Vincent and Mary Novello, who traveled to Salzburg to meet with Constanze as they were on this pilgrimage. But from this book, I was able to dispel so many myths about Constanze, and I really wish that this book was still in print. I bought this secondhand, as you can see, if you look closely. The pages have, markings and, it's a clean book inside, but it has some wear and tear, and I had to put, it smelled too, I had to put, like, baking soda, which doesn't hurt, by the way. Tip for people out there who are buying books of like an older, I apologize, it is very, one second. My apologies. It is very cold. But as I was saying, for people who want to buy used books, sometimes these books are, especially secondhand, they are sold places that are like really hard to come by. They're not stored very well, especially when you're buying them online. You never know what the warehouse situation looks like, or if it's a physical store. You never really know. When this came to me, it smelled like smoke. So what you can do, a little side tangent for researchers who want to buy old books that are no longer really in circulation, like this one. As you can see, there's some wear here on the binding of the book, but that's just why I don't use this one often. I only really use it when I need to cry. No, when I need a reminder of some things that I've read. But you will, if you're very empathetic towards Constanze as I am, you may find yourself tearing up just a little bit. When I did. quite a lot because, you know, I was looking through today for some books that I'm going to order, and I've been looking so long for a book about Constanze that doesn't paint her in this sexist light. I'm sure I've gone through this before, but I have a book on my shelf that is so angry and malignant and sexist, and there are no good research books out there about Constanze, just like specifically her in relation to her marriage and after Mozart. You know, like there's nothing. It doesn't exist. I was so disappointed. I thought I'd found one, but the problem is that this book painted Constanze in a decent light, but it painted Wolfgang as a man who committed affairs when we know that that's not true. We specifically know that that is not true in the modern, century, because researchers have done so much work and have disproved so many theories. Mozart did not have affairs of the heart. He just didn't. And to try and make assumptions in that way is just, it's wishful thinking. I'm very sorry. It's not there. It doesn't exist. And to try and do so just really it grinds my gears. To paint him, he was not so free with his... Once he was Constanze's, let's put it like that. And Constanze, in the same way, like... At the end of her life, here, 1829, like, when they interview her, they don't ask her questions about, oh, did Mozart cheat on you? Like, it doesn't happen in this novel. And I've read through this novel. It's like, it's more about, like, what was he like, and so many times she gives, like, the most candid of, like, responses. I don't know how else to describe it, but she just does. She gives... I have to find it. I want to mark this, so... So, here we have let's see, the introduction. I want to read through some of this because there's one piece of this beautiful, beautiful book that has truly touched my heart. And I know it's important. It's so important that this story is told. It needs to be. Okay, they went to Mannheim. I really need to mark the page. When they meet her, it's so beautiful. And they go to Salzburg. First, here it is. Let's read. So, at last, the long-awaited moment arrived, and the pilgrims climbed the narrow lane right along the side of Moschenberg. I'm gonna butcher some of these names since they're German. Immediately beneath the towering walls of the Hohensalzburg fortress, towards the lower spur of Naumburg and Madame von Nissen's house. This is Vincent Novello. Madame von Nissen very politely sent her servant to conduct us to her house a little after 2 o'clock. Let's see. Madame Nissen, who was waiting for us in the room on the first floor, received us in the most cordial and unceremonious manner. She had with her her own sister Sophie and Mozart's youngest son. An animated and to me a most interesting conversation began. This is Mary. We have just seen Mozart's widow. Oh, what a world of sensations has this interview excited. The woman that was so dear to him, whom he has so often fondly caressed, for whom his anxiety and tender solitude urged on to such great and glorious efforts of his genius. Next to seeing himself, it was the nearest approach to his earthly remains. And I felt during the whole interview as if his spirit were with us. How could it be otherwise? I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna cry. I don't know why, but this really touched my heart. Held his portrait in my hand, which breathes of life and of him. When I entered, I was so overcome with various emotions, I could do nothing but weep and embrace her. She seemed also affected, and repeatedly said in French, I've translated this, and the French translations of what Constanze says are not translated into English, so I've had to translate them myself, but she says, "Oh, I am so glad to meet someone who isn't so enthusiastic about my Mozart." I am so glad to meet someone who is so enthusiastic about my Mozart. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being as old as Constanze was, and probably witnessing all these terrible things being said about her by people in the streets all her life, about her reputation with Mozart, about her story, living into an old age and kind of like retiring and leaving out of the public eye, and then to have somebody come and to say, "Well, I want to know about your husband, and I want to know the story." So the novellas were not fluent in German, but Constanze was fluent in a couple of different languages, so she speaks French throughout this entire book. I do recommend that if you can have if you have a French dictionary, that you ought to probably translate some of her stuff. I've already done so. And some of the stuff that she says is quite endearing. Let's see. She speaks French fluently, though with a German accent, and Italian she thinks better, but as I do not converse in that language, she politely continued in French. She is indeed completely a well-bred lady, and though no remains of beauty appear except in her eyes, such as the engraving prefixed to her biography of Mozart would indicate, yet she keeps her figure in a certain air for a woman well of her age, which I suppose must be 65. She is charmingly lodged in the Nuns' Street, halfway up a cliff from which the most extensive and charming view is gained, scarcely to be equaled in the world. And then she talks about the furniture. She gives us an idea of where we are. Let's see. Then they talk about Nannerl, who, she's had her time in the sun. I don't hate Nannerl Mozart, but her story does not really touch my heart the same way as Constanze's has. Let's see. So then they ask her a question about Don Giovanni. About Mozart's Don Giovanni. The question is whether this, let's see, but that's not the one that I want to focus on. There are some really pretty, let's see. Ah, here it is. Here's the question. This question is about his habit of playing and singing, particularly which pieces he performed frequently, whether he played when alone, particularities. And Constanze says he did not play much in private, but would occasionally exemporize when he was sitting alone with her, and would often play over the songs which he wished her to learn. But he did not like playing to strangers, except if he knew them to be good judges. Then he would exert himself for their utmost gratification. He seldom played on the pianoforte, scarcely in company, unless he found someone who could appreciate him, but he would sometimes exemporize when with her alone. And another question, the one that I like the most. She talks about the portraits, which ones she considered the best likeness. And here's where some of the stuff started to help me for Faithfully Yours Mozart. It's like whether his disposition was lively and playful or melancholy, whether he could draw or paint or possessed any particular talent for any other part of art, or let's see. It's been a while. I'm gonna translate this so I can read her response, because I remember this one being quite funny. Let's see. Il est no E-T-O-I-T stay T-O-U. I love when I corrects like, did you mean this? It's like, it's a foreign language. Like, leave it alone. And then Constanze says, he was always so cheerful, was fond of painting, sculpture, and could draw himself. Indeed, she added, he had a superior talent for all the arts. Mary then goes on to say, she told us that he drew a little and was very fond of the arts, that he had indeed a talent for them all, that he was always in good humor, rarely melancholy, but of a very gay humor indeed. He was an angel, she exclaimed, and is one now. But throughout this entire book, this right here, honestly, you know, like this description of Constanze by Mr. Novello is honestly the kindest. You know, it's in her youth, her eyes must have been very brilliant and are still fine. Her face does not resemble the portrait given in her biography. It is now thin and has traces of great care and anxiety in it. But when her features relax into a smile, the expression is a remarkably pleasant one. She is of a rather small stature, slim figure, and looks much younger than what I expected to find her. Her voice is low and gentle, her manners well-bred and prepossessing, unconstrained, like a person who has lived much in society and seen a good deal of the world. And the way in which she spoke of her illustrious husband, though not so near and dear to him, was tender and affectionate. And I could perceive a little tremor in her voice while she was looking with me at his portrait, and on one or two or three occasions when she was alluding to some of the last years of his life, which was not the less affected nor pathetic from its being involuntary, unobtrusive, and partly repressed. Nothing could be more kind, friendly, even cordial than her behavior to me during the whole visit. Altogether, this lady is to me the most interesting of persons now in existence. She has said she has given away nearly everything to the numerous persons who had applied to her at different times for a memorial of him. Relics, a small portion of the little hairbrush which he arranged his hair every morning, a part of a letter addressed to him. I wish to have had a lock of his hair, but she has said it all crumbled away. So, this book is a beautiful piece of art, and in my opinion, it is one of the few beautiful pieces that I wish more people would draw on and would understand, because there's a part of it when when she's talking, and that never fails to get me to that people don't understand. Where is it? They completely they ask her a question. Here it is. What kind of speaking voice? I always love this one, when she describes how Mozart talked. What kind of speaking voice, whether high or low, loud or soft, and his singing voice, whether contralto, tenor, or bass, powerful or delicate. And Constanze says, his singing voice was a tenor, his speaking voice gentle, unless he was directing. Then he was energetic and would occasionally stamp with his feet, and once he was so loud in the cathedral that I heard him at an immense distance. His voice was a tenor, rather soft in speaking and delicate in singing, but when anything excited him, where it became necessary to exert it, it was both powerful and energetic. His usual exclamation was, "Know it," and occasionally he would stamp with his foot when impatient, or when things did not go correctly in the orchestra. With him at the opera, at the the induction of the seraglio, when they took the time of one of the movements too fast, he became quite impatient, and called out to the orchestra without seeming to have fear or without seemingly having a fear or being aware of the audience. Basically, they were playing D sharp instead of D natural at one of the words, and Mozart astonished the house, revealed his identity by crying out, "Damn it, play D natural!" at his friend Lesapeg, on his way thither, in order to spur on an elderly and sluggish orchestra, he drove the tempo of one of his symphonies excessively fast, stamping so violently that he lost a shoe buckle. It's so endearing. It's so wonderful to, I mean, you know, she's just relaying all of her husband's tea. Oh, Constanze, we love you. We love you so much. Oh, I love you, Constanze. But Constanze basically, you know, like she going through this, she tells stories about him, you know. She relays all kinds of things, you know. But at one point, you know, somewhere in this, and I don't remember what the page is, she goes through and she talks about how she wouldn't write a biography about herself because it was too tedious unless she had somebody to maybe dictate, because, you know, she was older at that point. She was like 65, 67, you know, something like that when they interviewed her. And And I really want to, I really want to read the story where she tells how like what it was like when he passed away, because that was probably, here it is. Let's see. Madame Mozart, let's see, she talks about her son. I asked her, this is Mary Novello, I asked her if she did not mean to give a biographical sketch of her own life. No, Constanze said, it was too fatiguing to write about herself. If she had anyone to write, she would dictate, for there were many interesting particulars. And then I think Mary asks her about Mozart's death, and she said his death was at last sudden, but a few moments before he had spoken so gaily, and in a few moments after he was dead. She could not believe it, but threw herself on the bed and sought to catch the fever of which he died. But it was not to be. There were moments, she declared, when she not only prayed sincerely to die, but that she did not love her children. Everything was hateful to her in the world, and yet, she says, here I still am, and have gone through all this suffering. Mozart not only died poor, but left some debts. And then she talks about why why Mozart married her. Basically, the emperor once asked him why he did not marry a rich wife. Mozart had said he always hoped he should be able to gain sufficient by his genius to maintain the woman he loved, and repeatedly told her he should not have known what to do with a witch. Pardon, I have a stutter. I'm going to start that over again. The emperor asked him why he did not marry a rich wife. He said he hoped he should always be able to gain sufficient by his genius to maintain the woman he loved. He repeatedly told her he should not have known what to do with a rich wife. She would have expected his undivided attention, and he must have neglected his compositions. He says, no one is happy as I am with a wife, he would exclaim. So basically, you know, he didn't want somebody who would be so used to this extravagant lifestyle. And yet, at the same time, he spared no expense for Constanze. If she wanted things, he would try his best to provide it for her. Not because she was used to it, but I think probably because he wanted to, because he loved her that much. You know? But, in reading that, you know, reading the words, you know, and yeah, here I am, and I have suffered so much. I don't think that she suffered in the marriage to Mozart. I think where Constanze suffered was in people's opinions of her, her father-in-law, society, you know, everybody who ever gave a damn about their relationship seemed to, you know, I mean, there was gossip, there was rumors, there was speculation, there was so much trial and tribulation and rumors of affairs, rumors of the heart that weren't true, you know, just so many things. And the sad reality is that she had to deal with that, and then to have him pass away at the age of 35, and his last wish is that, you know, who's going to take care of her? You know, who's going to take care of my Constanze? Her story is one that is so compelling. And I say this with all my heart. I've said it once before. The last couple of years has been this interesting revival of Manuel Mozart stories. And I've seen them, and I think they're incredible. And I think that they all deserve the attention that they're getting. I'm not interested in Manuel Mozart. I'm sure if I wrote a book about her, why, I'd probably be rolling in sales, because she seems to be who people are interested in. I'm just not. I see the lack of interest in actually giving Constanze her rightful dues and her rightful respect. And it just seems to me that it's a much more interesting story to write about the woman who loved him rather than the sister who we have things about. Not that she doesn't deserve her time to shine, she does. But I'm sure at some point, whenever I have people who are reading through this series, if ever, and buying it, and, you know, purchasing it, and doing all these things, they're gonna come to me and be like, why didn't you write more of Mozart and Nannerl, you know, blah, 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 that sort of thing. Well, I'm not interested in her. She's there, but I did not interested is the wrong word, because you cannot, you know, invest in Mozart when he's younger without Nannerl. But at the same time, I don't connect to Nannerl. Even though she, in some ways, is kind of in the same boat as Constanze, there are things in the Mozart story about Nannerl that didn't really interest me. So, in writing the story that I have about her, about Constanze specifically, I feel much more for Constanze, because it just seems like all the interpretations of her are the same. Nobody's willing to dig deeper. Nobody's willing to sort of like decide and that it's her turn as well. If you're gonna write about a historical woman who has been historically left behind, Nannerl is a fine choice, but Constanze was left behind too. Anna Maria was left behind too. There are a lot of people who were left behind. The Weber sisters, left behind. I give them all a voice as much as I can with as limited information as I have on all of them. They all have a voice in this book. I'm much more interested in the Weber family than I am about, you know, Nannerl. But I digress. This day is about Constanze. And with that, I would recommend, if you are interested to see the Mozart story continue, Book 2 comes out January 27th on Wolfgang's birthday. And I think it would be befitting to make a purchase. If you want to see a story of a forgotten woman finally put into a light where she is treated with respect. Faithfully yours, Mozart treats Constanze with respect. I've had enough of watching movies and books and TV shows and plays and seeing all these things paint her as a light-headed, airheaded, Regency-era, doxy, light skirt, you know, loose woman, all those wonderfully terrible, you know, things that they paint her out to be. I'm really kind of over it. And I want her to really, I want her to be treated with respect for once. And it seems that I may have to be the first to write a research-based book that finally paints her in a good light. Because everybody else has failed. One's too sexist. The other paints Mozart as like an infidelity fiend. The only one who's doing any good out there for the women of Mozart's time is Jane Glover. Which is really sad and disappointing at the same time that only one person, really? Come on. Everybody else has failed. In my opinion. So, you know, it's kind of time. I think it's time that we give Constanze, the rights that she's due, and she is due respect. You wouldn't have Mozart without her. You wouldn't have the legacy. You wouldn't have the music. You would have nothing. You wouldn't have the Mozarteum in Vienna. So I'm fighting for her too. I'm fighting for her, and I'm fighting for a humanized look at Wolfgang. For the first time in 200 some years of their existence and history. I think it's time that we fight for respect. You know, why do they have to be regaled to this place on this shelf where they are just seen and treated as, you know, the spectacle or a joke, or seen in the light that is, you know, unkind. I guarantee you, if it's the last thing I do with this book series, I mean, it will not be the last thing I do. I have so many more things that I will be writing and creating and bringing to the table, but if it takes all my might to bring Constanze into a light of respect, even in this tiny corner where I am not seen, not heard, not listened to, and, you know, never supported massively. Those who have supported me, I know you're there, and I appreciate you immensely. But, you know, I maybe I'll just be the lone voice that says Constanze was not a perfect woman, but she had parts of her, like any human, that was good. And clearly she loved Wolfgang because I don't know what you've read, but what I read suggested to me that she was fell into a depression. Maybe you just hate women. If you can't bring yourself to have any compassion for her. I do have compassion, I will also add, for my own clarification. I do care about Nannerl's story. Her story wasn't easy. But at the same time, she also had a very narcissistic father. And maybe one of these days, I'll do my own take on Nannerl's story. Maybe I'll try. But it will be very different than to what most people do. A lot of people tend to write with a bias, like I am, probably, most likely am, for Constanze. My take on Nannerl would not be that. Be very different. Anyway, I believe I have said what I have to say. This short video turned into a long video, but thank you for joining me today. This is not the typical setting. This is not the typical way I would do things, but I thought it was Constanze's birthday. I ought to speak on her. I ought to share. Really, what inspired Faithfully Yours Mozart was not just Wolfgang. It was also Constanze. As I've said, she too holds a very special place in this story. She has very much a voice, you know. Unlike most stories where they completely forget that it was her who told the story. She's an Eliza Hamilton. And if we can love Eliza, I think it's about time we love Constanze too. Anyway, I'm Faith Jacobs, and I will catch you all on the flip side. Happy 2025, and moving forward, I hope that that you will all join me in coming along on this journey for Faithfully Yours Mozart, which I will say, I can't believe I'm going to say this. Subscribe, like, comment, buy this internationally. You can get it anywhere. I swear to you. You can get it in the Netherlands. You can get it in Germany. You can get it in the States. You can get it in England. You can get it in Japan, France, Italy. You can buy Faithfully Yours Mozart internationally. Anywhere. Listed below are only a few of the places internationally you can get it, but you can get it anywhere. Canada. You can get it in Canada. You can get this book anywhere, internationally, through Amazon. And here's the good thing. It all is supporting me. There is no middleman. There's nobody else I'm paying. It's all me. So any purchase you make really helps me. And share the book if you know, like I'm on Instagram. You can find the Faithfully Yours Mozart book on Instagram. And if you get the book, you want to tag the page and you want to, show yourself off with this novel. One of my actor friends did this. So, angle the book if you want. You can be Whoopi's face. And you can, just share that you've got it. If you want to leave a review on Amazon, if you want to follow me on Goodreads, please do, and review the book there. I really want to hear what people think of this, because it's important to me. It's not a perfect series. It never will be. What book is? I'm probably going to get a few haters who are like, why is Mozart autistic? Something like that eventually. But this is written for the neurodivergents, and it's written for the people who... It's written for the Constanzes and the Mozarts who were left behind by history. And left behind in life. That's who this book is for. So, if that's for you... Hashtag Faithfully Yours Mozart the book. Tag the Instagram page. Share it on whatever social media platforms you use. Heavens knows if TikTok will be around, but you could share it there. It's... The point is, I need help getting the word out there about this book. I've done all that I can, and I continually try to market it on social media as best I can. But sometimes the algorithm hates neurodiversity and neurodivergence and people like me. It's hated me for 5 years. So it would mean a lot, really, really, sincerely, genuinely, honestly, truly, 100%, with so much gratitude. It would mean a lot to me to have help getting this book out there, heard, seen, read, made. I think it's important. I think it's more important than people realize. Anyway, if you'd like to leave a like, a comment, kindness is always appreciated. And until next time, I will see you all on the flip side.